You're listening to Women in Wellness, a program to help you create gorgeous growth for your blissful business in health and wellness. I'm Dr. Gabby, holistic health expert and founder of Women in Wellness, a one-of-a-kind course and community designed to empower and inform you about how to build a purposeful and profitable holistic business. I have a super great person here today that I'm interviewing, Rachel Feldman. Rachel's the founder of Rachel's Wellness, and she's the creator of the Done For You programs called Wellness Business Solutions. It's a box for health coaches. She empowers health coaches worldwide with tools for a healthy life and a healthy business, and she's going to share some of that with us today, and I'm so excited. Hi, Rachel.
Thank you for having me. I love these topics, women, wellness, business. I mean, bring it on. So thank you for having me here. It's really, really exciting.
And I was so happy to discover that you and I are close together. We're both in Florida. You're in Boca. I'm in Miami. So we're practically neighbors.
I know.
And we're representing South Florida with the wellness and business stuff. But prior to doing this, I did some research about you and read that you had been in commercial real estate. Mm-hmm. And then you transitioned at some point into the Reiki and health coaching. Can you tell people a little bit about how that happened?
Yeah. So, I mean, whenever I do these interviews, I always say, like, do we have 7 days, 10? Is this like a series? Because, I think our stories always are so expansive and they're so long and it's hard to kind of figure out like how to chunk them down. So I am a little of a ranter, so interrupt me if I do, but I'll chunk it down. I've always been that person that has passion. So I've always gone after jobs that were with people. That's always been very important to me. So being in commercial real estate, I actually loved doing what I did. It was like the thrill of the deal. And I'm from Philly. So it was at the time when real estate, condo conversions and buildings. And for me, that was creativity. I'm not a person who paints. That's kind of my daughter. She's only 7, but she's a great painter. For me, course creation, which is what I do now, or then buildings. I found that art was in buildings. And so, and also making deals. That was actually how I felt that I was being creative. So I was in commercial real estate and at like the height of my career, working in a boiler room setting for a national company. And
it sounds like a movie, like a Hollywood movie.
I was like, and of course I talk with my hands. So, and I started to what I call, this was when the trash can really spilled over. I was a competitive swimmer my whole life. I had an ulcer when I was 14 and was that typical. Prilosec just came out. The doctor was like, you have an ulcer. We're going to put you on Prilosec. It was like $4 a pill at that time. Insurance didn't cover it. I then got asthma when I was 18. I will also segue with this before we even get into the later part. My pop-up, who was pretty much like my father, also died next to me at that time. Literally 2 weeks later, I got asthma. And not just like I have a little cough, like intubated asthma, life support, on prednisone for years, theophylline, like you name it, every medication. But ironically, I was still the girl who went to the gym and looked fine. So this is what I think we see typically. And, I always preface this, like, I'm not a doctor, not a nutritionist. Like, this is my story. But this is what I see in the world, not just the United States, like the world, is that we all look fine and that we're suffering with something that's happening, my kids included. And I'll get into that. So I'm in commercial real estate, loving my job, busting my butt, knowing that I was one of 2 girls out of 80 in a boiler room setting. So I, talk about glass ceiling. I was in that office at 7:30, which means this girl was getting up to go to the gym, 4:30, and it's in Philly. I'm from Philly. So I had like the hoodie up, like freezing, going to the gym. But I was, in work, and I did not leave with my BlackBerry in hand until pretty late at night. And I loved it. But stress, raise everything. Body saying, I think we've had enough. is that around 25, I remember turning to my mom and, you know, I had never, well, I'll say it, pooped that great, always had digestive issues, always had like, you know, some rashes, stuff like that, you know, intolerances. But no one really talked about it back then. And I turned to my mom and I said, something's really wrong. I feel like I'm dying. I mean, it was that clear. And I was going to the bathroom if once a week and it was yellow. I was like jaundice looking. And that was when it was like in and out. And Philadelphia has great hospitals, great specialists, everything. And nobody could figure out what was happening. And so my boss at the time was like, you know, my first boss was like, you know, I know, and I called him because I knew that he knew all these different people. He's like, I know this guy, he's this chiropractor, you know, and I know this other guy, and he actually is Denny Waxman, who was, you know, one of the big people in Philadelphia who, you know, headed the macrobiotic movement there. And he was like, I'm going to introduce you to Denny. That was, you know, when I was macrobiotic at the time. Just, I start to get chills because it just, I was so blessed for what I called the angels in my life at that time. You know, and went to this chiropractor and the guy was like, okay, I'm going to do a battery of tests. And I was like, yeah, I did, you know, upper lower GIs, I've done it. He's like, no, these are different tests. Lo and behold, he was like, you have liver toxicity, you have adrenal fatigue stage 3, you have parasites, you have candida, you have allergies I've never seen, you have mercury poisoning I've never seen this high. And this was, you know, I'm 41 now. So this was back when nobody really talks about mercury poisoning. So
had you had a lot of fillings?
No. But what I was doing was I was cracking open a can of tuna twice a day because it was just eating it so easy on the go.
Wow.
And, you know, this is where I always say everyone's so different. The one person who's eating McDonald's every day, healthy, lives to 100. Right. The other person eating McDonald's and is like, you know, sicker than a dog. It's just who I was, you know, biochemically and genes and everything. And we could get into a whole gene mutation talk on another day. I don't have the genes that detoxify and methylate. So long story short is he was like, wow, you've got this. And I said, look, I just paid you like $7,000-8,000 for these tests. I don't have this extra money. And he was like, well, this is the protocol. That's it. And I just looked at him like bewildered after, you know, I said, okay, well, I can do the heavy metal, but like after that, I don't know what else to do. And I had done the heavy metal with him, went back, and he was like, it's going to be another this amount of money. I left his office crying on my way from like, it was like 45 minutes outside of Philly, crying back into Philly. Came down, you know, which is the road leading to what was Fresh Fields in like Fairmount, which is now Whole Foods. Walked in, was like, hit me with your book section. I need the top books. And they were like, here. Picked up my first book, like Paul Pitchford, Human with Whole Foods.
I use that text when I teach my Eastern nutrition classes.
Yeah, I mean, just picked up like another few books and I went home. I don't think I left the house for 5 days. I went into this small natural food market, a scene, and just the people there literally took me and they were like, here's a wheatgrass machine, here's a juicer, like here, and just hit me with all knowledge. And I just became a sponge. And I said at that moment, like, I am just going to research. And at that time it was a dial up. So you'd be like, nah, 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 ding, 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 you know, it wasn't like Google. So, you know, I would walk around and everyone laughed because I was the jiggle girl, they called me. I had an H&M bag that was filled with these supplements because I just was like, okay, I've got heavy metals, I've got this, I've got that. And I'm not suggesting anyone should do this, you know, find your practitioners. And I did. I was very lucky that I found a 5-element practitioner. I found an energy worker. You know, I found a shaman. I found a homeopath. Like the people came into my path. But what I realized at that moment is that I never wanted to be disempowered. And I had so many people who were like, oh, take this one thing will work. And that never did work. It never did work for my body. I did see people even after that time, you know, I got diagnosed with Lyme's. You know, there were many things that came thereafter. And my body was never this one size fits all. So over those many years, and birthing babies that had, even though I had done so much work, that had their own health issues and stuff like that from just a toxic mom, I realized, you know, one day I want to be, you know, a person that doesn't tell somebody you have to do X, Y, and Z. I don't believe that exists. I believe that, you know, I teach my babies now, like, be empowered, you know, close your eyes, put your hand out and see what you need, food wise, you know, whatever wise. And so that inspired me. I said, one day I'm going to go into this profession when I can. And before even my second child was born, I decided that for myself, being under 5 foot, Jewish, Aries, from Philly, everything more than a trifecta, I had always had a tough time with slowing down. And I knew that that was a huge part of the ulcerative colitis that came. You know, it was just one thing gets toppled on each other. And so I knew for myself, I needed to go to Reiki school. I knew for my family.
Why Reiki? Why? I mean, you're meeting all these practitioners, you're on this journey, you're learning all this stuff, you're reading all these books. What was it about Reiki that called to you as a tool or as a teaching?
Well, in Philly, there was this phenomenal school. I mean, it was like, so I walked by it even all the time. And I worked with this amazing energy worker. I always say, really, the people that have come into my life or that I allowed to come, they really were my angels. I mean, and I also let them be. So I always say, like, it wasn't that somebody shows up and you know, the teacher appears when the student is ready. But I was like, wow, this energy stuff is huge. It's really huge. And I thought, you know what? I need this for myself. I need to learn how to, you know, I've been doing EFT. I mean, you name it, like EMDR, like whatever I could get my hands on. My husband would always say, if someone told you to shove something like anywhere in, like, you do it. And I was like, of course I would, because if there was a way to get to another place in my life, I would do it. And so with Reiki, it just made sense to me, like, okay, here I could, you know, shift the energy in my body. And it really also was inspired with my children. You know, I mean, that was a big thing. My son was little. And I think for me, my children have always been such a big inspiration. Like, yes, it took me a long time to want to say, like, I'm going to change for myself. I don't know if that's for every woman, but, you know, as women, I think often we put ourselves lowest on the totem pole, but children come and we're like, wow, okay, I want to be so different for my child so that they're different, so that their path is different. And so I went to Reiki school, and then I decided to go level 2 and happened to get pregnant with my daughter. And so she was inside of me during level 2. And it's a whole nother level of the intuitiveness that she has. But it was just it really was another level of journey for me, because I always chased, it's not the symptom. I always looked at it as a physical gig. You know, I've got digestive issues. I've got this. I'm an ulcer. Here's the asthma. And the Reiki aspect was, okay, there's another level that's happening. What is the emotional level? You know, and that's what I love also about, you know, going to acupuncture, which I've gone to for, it's been 12 years every week. I don't miss it. You know, that here it always brings me back to the state of, okay, so the lungs, but like, what sadness and grief am I holding on to?
Yeah, we're so on the same page. The stuff also, yeah, I've been teaching for 10 years. It's such a shift from thinking that all, you know, the doctors and everyone can heal you to embracing the self-healing. It's such a shift from all my problems are physical to let me work on this emotionally and energetically. I mean, it's such a different paradigm. I'm wondering, at what point do you remember the moment that you were like, I'm doing this as a career? This is going to be my life work.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Can you tell me what that was?
So when my daughter she was born and she was maybe like 5 months, I remember turning to my husband. I was like, this is the first time that I wasn't in commercial real estate. It was the first time I wasn't working, and I'd always worked for myself, never for anyone else. And I was like, it's time. I just know it's time. The babies, I can take this time to go to school. And ironically, 4 months before I graduated, my husband turned to me and said, hey, honey, good news. Which one do you want? Good news or bad news? I was like, okay, hit me with the bad news. He's like, bad news. My business crashed and burned and we lost all our savings, everything. He's like, good news. We own our house. And so we can sell it and we can make a great lifestyle change and a move and we'll be okay. And I was like, looking at my 2 kids under the age of under the age of like 4. And I'm thinking, okay, so I had made the decision that I would do this and I knew this was my calling. Like, when you know something's in soul and it's really speaking from soul. And I said, you know what? At that moment in our office, in his office, in our house, in our home in, Philadelphia, I was like, okay, I can go back to commercial real estate. I knew instantly. I was like, I can go back. I can make this amount of money. And like, or I knew even if we moved to Florida, like I knew who I could call right away to, scouting. I didn't even need to scout. I knew, but I was like, I'm not going to do that. I know this is what I need to do. And to be honest, and I say this always, I had no idea how I was going to start this. I'd started businesses, but starting a commercial real estate business, and I've sold so many things, was different than going into a health and wellness business. People always think, oh, you just bring over a list. It's not that. Maybe people will congratulate you and maybe some of them will be your clients, but they don't just all merge and it's not the same. And so I started that business and it was at that moment and it wasn't the easiest in the beginning. I didn't.
Yeah. Can we just pause here? Because this is my whole motivation for interviewing you and everyone else is that the expectations, once you decide to start your practice, whether that means getting an office or going to people's homes or whatever, if it's just online, whatever that looks like, I think there is some false expectations and
false isn't even the word. I thought I was going to come out of school and it was going to be boom, 150 an hour. I was going to have people lined up and especially in Philly. I mean, I thought like, okay, well, I know everyone, so this is going to be a piece of cake. So moving to a brand new city where I knew nobody with 2 kids, that was a whole nother ball game. But I still thought, well, I've been through so much. I have so much knowledge. People are going to hire me, and this is going to be easy. There is so much that is also part of that. One is self-worth, charging self-worth. One is even, I had gone through my experience, but I didn't have a system in place in my head of what I was going to do. So I was nervous on what that system was. That wasn't taught in school. I'm like, what am I handing out? What am I really doing? The health history I was giving away the shopping center for free on the health history. There was so much that was kind of, even though I had clients, again, wasn't charging my self-worth. I was tired. I was exhausted. I was seeing them at night. So I think the expectation is that, and then you're seeing this here, you can get, make 5,000. I'm making 5,000. I'm getting 30 clients in 5 days. I just clocked 1 million. And you're just like,
what?
You're like, you're sitting there and you're like, tears are coming down. And so that's why, it took a lot for me to really stay very focused. And I think the other part is everyone has this expectation that it happens overnight. And I think because I was in real estate and they would always say, takes 3 years to build a book. I had so many friends from being from Philly that own salons, and they would always say 3 years to build a book. And I think when we get into this like entrepreneurial online thing, we think 5-figure launch, or, you know, I'm going to make this in 30 days. And it's like, wait, hold on. You have to think about some things such as, are you an LLC? Do you get an office? Do you keep a home office? Are you an online coach? Are you an offline coach? And I think those are the things that we don't think of first. You know, who is your niche? What is really their pain point? And they're a human. It's not just like, and I sell done-for-you programs. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to just buy a program, spend $5,000 on a gorgeous site, $7,000 on copy, and I'm set. It's like, no, actually, you have to be a human and then actually sell. And I think that's the part. I was very fortunate that we didn't have the money. So I wasn't able to buy courses. I wasn't able to hire coaches. I actually had to go into the do mode. And I say that often. So the expectations, I had to deal with those expectations. And I think I know a lot of my success was because I had to actually go into that do mode. I had to cry over, you know, the writing about me. I would say to my husband, can you read this? He'd be like, I just read this for like the 50th time. I was like, I just tweaked it a little.
I changed 2 words. You have to read
I just changed it. I put a picture here. I had the crappiest site.
Yeah.
But you know what I did from the beginning, and this is what I want to say really loud and clear, is that I blogged from the beginning because I knew that people that would build authority. No one even talked the word authority at that time. That's a very new 2015 word.
Okay, so what year was it that you were doing this blogging and making the bad website?
2010.
Okay, so 6 years ago. Cool.
I mean, 2009. Like, that's when this all started. And that's when I started my LLC. But like, I decided to take that year and say, okay, I'm not going to take on coaches. I'm not going to take on clients. So I really started with this site. I started with videos because I knew, what did I do? I Googled.
Right.
So what are people doing who don't feel well? Who's going on? They are Googling. And what is the highest SEO? I'm not going to pay. I watched other coaches who didn't know their niche, who were just dropping and spending a boatload on websites. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. So I had a crappy website. I blogged, and I still keep to that schedule. I blog twice a week. I went on Facebook, and I hear this all the time. A coach will say, well, I only have 1 like. I'm like, so did I. And I only had 3 people to my first TEL class. But if I would have quit then, I wouldn't be able to clock hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, or be asked to podcasts or summits. I've never pitched to one person. This was the first year, 7 years into my business. And I'm like, maybe I should pitch to like some people. But that to me is called organic success.
Right. And so for the women who are listening, who are in those first years, like the years 2009, 2010, 2011, when you wanted to quit, when you only had the 3 likes, when, you know, for that audience. So what do they need to know? You know, what's important to keep going, to, you know, to make those decisions? One of the things I hear a lot is like, I don't know what, like, should I make the sales funnel? Should I do the Facebook ad? Should I go out and speak? Should I, like, there's overwhelm, there's confusion, there's so many options. Like, what do you suggest?
Those are all great questions. And I think I could answer them honestly in 5 different ways, because number one, let's even just start with brick and mortar basics, which is that if you don't have a Facebook business page, get one. They take 5 minutes to start. That is going to push your search engine optimization into the world. You know, so even if you're like, nobody's on it, Facebook will start to see that you have one and that you're posting. They like videos, they like live stream, which is why they opened that up in the year of 2016. So I would say, number one, start there. if you don't know your niche, start to really think of your own story. Your niche is looking you in the mirror. It's a pretty basic thing. You may have about 20 sub niches from that, which I call, you have the tree trunk, then you have the tree, the branches, and then you have the leaves. There are going to be different niches and sub niches and messages. Test, test, test. Like, there's not just going to be this one all be all like, ooh, I worked with a branding expert and ooh, it's all, you're going to change. I changed. You're going to change. So I think the thing is, don't wait for the perfect moment. If we did that with children, there would be nobody in the world born. And it's the same thing as a business. So, test something out. So for example, if it's just, let's say the easy one, if it's weight loss, if test out like weight loss and say, are you just feeling, extra, tired, and you feel like that New Year's resolution, like you say, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, but here we are in July, or here we are in August, and you didn't keep to that. If you want to keep to that, feel free to download this, or feel free to sign up for my webinar, or I invite you to a free strategy session, or, whatever that is. If you think that you love the word cleansing and detox, but you want to work with corporate women, maybe that's not the right word to be pushing to them, even though that may align with you and you believe in it. I worked corporate. It was a fine word with me, but corporate is really busy. And so someone might be like, oh God, that's like, I can't do a detox. So really think about what is the life of the niche you want to work with, and what are their pain points and what are their joy points. Really get into that. That's number 2. Number 3 is, if you feel overwhelmed, start to compartmentalize. What do you feel overwhelmed about? Is it the tech part? You don't need to outsource everything. I think the beauty of business is that you almost own the restaurant, meaning that you have to know every part of your business. That's what makes you a successful and sustainable entrepreneur, because one-hit wonders don't do anything. To have a sustainable business means you know how to be a waitress, you know how to be the line cook, you know how to be the chef.
You can sweep the floor and clean the toilet.
You can sweep the floor and clean the toilets, because if the VA is gone and MailChimp crashes and burns, or Infusionsoft or Aweber, you're like, okay, I can do this. So I would say, if techie is taking you down though, great, outsource it, but learn it as well. And it doesn't mean you have to learn it that day, but take deep breaths. I would say the biggest thing for that person in the new stages is, don't quit before that miracle happens. Meaning, you're not going to get 100 likes, realize it takes time to build trust and authority. You want to build that offline, meaning find 5 local people. They're usually the people you see, an acupuncturist, the yoga, the Pilates people, the juice, bar that you go to, whatever business you're in. Find the 5 people, approach them. You may feel a little flutter. You may feel like you want to vomit or have diarrhea. It's okay. Wipe it up after. But approach them. And then online, you're building that visibility. Even if you never want to be an online coach, maybe you do retreats, but you still have to have a presence, because people will find you because you have that online presence.
Which is how I found you, because you have such a strong presence online. Yeah. And so I was like, oh, she's my people, right?
Yeah. And all of a sudden, so again, don't master everything. Maybe think about where your people are. Facebook. Then maybe you branch out to Instagram. Then maybe you branch out to Google Plus. Mm-hmm. Then, blog and put on those social shares. So then you don't spend any time, and all of a sudden a blog takes you an hour maybe to write, but you're sharing it and you're just done.
Right. And the other thing that I wonder is, when I see you online, everything looks perfect, right? Like, your website's beautiful, it's gold and sparkly, and, I see you posting all the time on Facebook. So I think what happens sometimes is that people who are new, they don't realize that behind the scenes, it's not like that all the time behind the scenes. That's just the brand. The brand is.
And not only that, people don't see, and I should have done this, I almost wonder if I could go back and pull up the different sites, because
Oh, you can. There's a website where you can put in and you can click on the dates and it shows what your website looked like.
I should, because it's almost like, you know, when like, this isn't my first ring, you know, it's almost like, you know, it's the same thing with your site. Like the first site I had no idea who I was. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when I post, you know, I don't have somebody else posting for me. A lot of people do. I write my own posts. They come from me. They come from my heart. Some people do like to outsource that, but it's like, just start somewhere. Even if that's Weebly, Squarespace, Wix, you know, get it visually, because I think I'm such a visual person. I have to see something. So even if you just start, those are free ones. If you want to pay the $15 to upgrade and not have an advertisement, start somewhere. That's a simple step. Right. You know, the other thing is the posting on Facebook. I mean, look, there are so many free places to get photos, or I will show you a trick. This baby is my social media queen because I could go like this. I teach this when I actually do this when I teach. I could be on Instagram and I could take a picture of us, which I will right now. I could take a picture, and then all of a sudden I could hashtag this and be like, I am chilling with Dr. Gabby, hashtag podcast, hashtag crushing it live. And then do, you know, at my Twitter, and then post that on Facebook and Twitter. And I've just killed 2 birds with one, or actually 3 birds with one stone. Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. This is my biggest advice. Be you. Like, you know, with your, and I will do this. I won't take up the time, but be you with, especially if you're like me. I have 2 kids, you know, they're 7 and 9. I've built this business with them. My first virtual assistant wasn't until I was 3.25 years into my business. So I say that loud and clear, like, this was me crying over MailChimp. This was me doing everything. And it was, you know, so when you feel like, oh, I'm going to quit, no one's reading my blog, no one's doing this, just don't quit, but do something. And schedule, if you can schedule an hour a day, 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night, or all 1 hour in the morning to dedicate to your business. Whether it's, you know, trying to look for health histories in the different places that we talked about, online or offline, whether it's batching. I just had a client session and she was like, I don't know what to, you know, post about. And I was like, great, let's think of 7 ideas right now. And when you have that really creative moment, go to your whiteboard or write it down, keep a journal. Like, you know, usually when we're in the shower, we always have those like really clear moments, or when we're driving.
I get them on walks. I'll go through walks through the marina and I'll be like, idea.
Like these, you know, I think it's so easy on Facebook to fall for like the rainbow and glitter. And I'll share this with you this morning. This is the behind the scenes. I had hired someone to write copy. I get it this morning. I wake up pretty early. And so I get it. And I was like, oh my God, it's horrible. And like, I just had tears. And I was just like, oh my God, oh, why did I do this? You know, and nobody sees that. You know, nobody sees that behind the scenes. And what I did was, instead of crying, I cried a river. It was okay. I cried. I cursed a little. I said to the hubby, like, of course, this is at 6 o'clock in the morning. As, you know, I was like, I can't believe it. And he was like, I'm so sorry, honey. No, thank God he's my rock. He's like, I'm so sorry, honey. And, you know, and then what did I do? I took action. I wrote it myself. I contacted one of my editors and I was just like, because I have dyslexia, you know, never let it stop me. But I was just like, I just need this checked. And nobody ever talks about that. They just talk about the wins and the sales funnels. So this is getting to your sales funnel question, is that it got worked out. If I would have freaked out like I did earlier in business, like I would have just lost all my stuff, not had a mojo for a webinar I have to do tonight. If you're new, sales funnels are important, but what's more important is an opt-in freebie. You want that on your site. If you don't have a site, you do want it somewhere, whether it's Facebook or Instagram. At the top of your Instagram, you can put in that little like profile. It doesn't have to be your site. It can be a link directly as a clickable to your opt-in freebie. That is where the sales conversation starts.
Right.
So if you're focusing on a sales funnel, think about that opt-in freebie. What do your people need? Then have a follow-up. Don't hit them with a follow-up every day.
Contact them constantly.
Like,
okay, so before we run out of time, tell me, like, you're doing a webinar tonight. For what? Why?
Why?
So people who, you know, see this interview, like what's your opt-in? How can they get involved in the wellness community?
Do we have 10 years? I do a lot of free stuff, and I'll tell you why. Because I was in the beginning of my career, we didn't have that money for me to hire coaches. I was really confused, and there were no free resources. And I really I felt alone, really alone. And Facebook was not what it is now with like different groups. You were talking about your group. I was talking about my free group before there were just not groups around. And so I have a lot of free tools at www.rachelswellness.com, like anywhere from email marketing made simple pro kit to top subject lines to when to send out emails, like you name it. I have interviews, I mean, tons of stuff in the webinar. And I also have webinars I've done with replays there, as well as.
So what's the webinar that you do
tonight? The webinar is how to do a health history and convert it to a paid client, because I used to do the health history and make the biggest mistake that almost every health coach makes, which is giving away the shopping center for free. Because I would do that 60-minute health history and I would be giving it away because that's what heart-based coaches do. And then they would be like, thank you so much. And I would get up on the phone and go, why did I do that? So I'm talking about what strategy to use, how to be more of a listener, how to go through it. And I do a lot of free webinars for that reason. I also created the Done For You programs for coaches, because what happened in year 3 of my business is I felt overwhelmed, didn't have the time, was fumbling, putting recipes together, pulling from Alana's pantry. I mean, there weren't recipes back then, really. 101 cookbooks was really the only game in town. And there were like 10, 15 ingredients. I'm like, who has time for that in the world? So I wanted to put together a program that aligned with not only my system, but that was doable for people and that brought in the emotional and physical aspects. And so that became the first program. And a coach said to me, wow, your business seems streamlined. Like, what happened? I said, I realized people need systems to hire you. The work with me to 50-minute session is dead. And I'm not saying this to scare people. It's just that, like, it just wasn't enough. That's what I realized. Saying to someone, I'm giving you handouts, wasn't enough. So that was the first one. Then the second one came, and they all birthed because I was asked either to do mom groups. I was asked to work at gyms. They all came because that's what I needed in my practice. And so every program that came after that was birthed out of the need of what I believe was really the perfect sales funnel.
Rachel, you're so mind-blowing. Like, I totally get why you create program after program after program, because it's just like this flow that comes through you. And I know that we could talk for the next 4 hours. We don't have time. So I need for people to find you and contact you to learn more. Is that rachelswellness.com? Is that
So I always say, I'm one of those people, I have a feeling you're that way, like, send smoke signals. I will get them, but no, honestly, you can find me. It's www.rachelswellness.com. That is like my home hub. Like, whatever's happening, events, free tools, like, go there, you'll see them. Then the programs that are the Done For You programs are www.healthcoachbiz.rachelswellness.com. There are some that are evergreen, meaning they don't change. And then pretty much every season, I write 2 brand new programs.
Gee, I don't know how.
I don't know how either. But you know what? That is speaking from a girl who had dyslexia and thought she was dumb and just a swimmer and a pretty girl. It is part of, I think, what has like karmically taken me to a different place. Then there is Instagram, which is just really fun to see my life. And I think it's where we can't live in the hype, you know? So I love that. And that's Rachel's Wellness. And then you can find me on Facebook at Rachel's Wellness. And I always say to coaches, like, if you feel confused, like, reach out to me, you know, friend me on Facebook. If I'm at that 5,000, I'll go and find somebody that I don't even know and unfriend them just for you.
I love that. We love you, Rachel. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, guys. So happy to see you and so happy to be like with your community. So thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. You can join the Women in Wellness Club at women-in-wellness.com.